Welcome everybody to a brand new video. Today we're going to be talking about the stock market again, and I want to come out and just say that I was wrong. A little while back, I made a video talking about how Warren Buffett sold off some of his shares in certain air flight companies, such as Delta, for example. In that video, I sort of speculated over the reason why he decided to make that decision, and myself, along with a lot of other people, speculated that the reason why he made that decision was so that he can slide under 10% ownership of the company so that he could buy more shares of the company if it were to fall at a certain price. However, given recent news, it turns out the reason why Warren Buffett did that is actually so that he could sell off his entire position in airline companies. I actually heard about this because Ayeshi brought it up to me, and then I decided to look up the information myself, watch a few YouTube videos of other people talking about it, and yes, Warren Buffett decided to sell all of his shares in all of the airline companies that he owned. One of those companies being Delta Airlines, which is a company that I still have shares in. I haven't sold off any of my positions for Delta Airlines, and I will talk about that more later on in this video. But yes, Warren Buffett did sell off his entire position, which is extremely surprising because not only did he just sell off his position, but he also sold it at a loss, a significant loss. According to him, they sold it for a good bit cheaper than what they bought it for, which is very unlike Warren Buffett. He usually invests in what he calls wonderful companies with the intention of holding them long term and not selling them at a loss, unless for some reason he believes that there is just no chance whatsoever of a company going under. And to get into the reason why he actually sold off all of those companies, in his own words, I'm not exactly phrasing what he said correctly, but paraphrasing, in his opinion, he thinks that the airline industry is changed forever because of the coronavirus, and he just doesn't really see them recovering. He claims that it wasn't because CEO or managers were doing anything wrong. In fact, he actually hopes for the best, and he hopes that airline companies can overcome this and recover at some point in the future. But he personally believes that that is not going to be the case, which is quite shocking. And for somebody like myself who has shares in Delta Airlines, it was worrying hearing this information. When Ayeshi came to me and told me that he sold off all of his shares, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit worried because I was thinking, well, if Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of all time, if not the greatest, decided to sell off all his shares, well, what does that mean for the companies? Does it mean that the companies are bad? And I'm not going to sit here in this video and say that I have the answers for those questions. I have my own opinion. Warren Buffett has his own opinion. I could be right. He could be right. I could be wrong. He could be wrong. We don't know. Only time will tell. But Warren Buffett himself does not see a future for these airline companies. If he came to that decision by himself through his own research, then I can't fault him for it. And with what I'm about to say, I really quickly want to mention that I'm not taking anything away from Warren Buffett. He is definitely, in my opinion, the greatest investor of all time. So what I'm about to say is not like any sort of shade towards him. I mean, not that he would even really care what someone else's opinion about him is, but in my opinion, I do have to sort of question his judgment on this decision. I'm not saying that he made the wrong decision, but I personally see a different outcome for airline industries. Do I believe that Delta Airlines specifically is going to get through this entire ordeal without a scratch? No. Because obviously the coronavirus is a very big deal and it has impacted airline companies very strongly. There is about a 95% drop in flying activity, which is a huge amount. That is not something to dismiss. Some of these companies have cut back on spending so that they can stay afloat and not go into bankruptcy. Delta Airlines is specifically a company that I invested in, and they managed to get bailed out by the government like I predicted. I expected that Delta Airlines was going to get a bailout. However, it's not all good news because with the announcement of the fact that Delta did get a bailout, because of government restrictions, they are no longer allowed to go forward with stock buybacks, and they have to suspend their dividends until they pay back this loan, which is painful because one of the attractive things about Delta Airlines to me was the fact that their dividend was so generous. But of course, that is going to be suspended for the time being. So that does kind of hurt a little bit. The money that I have in Delta Airlines isn't going to be creating me any sort of income. So you guys might be asking yourselves, why don't you sell Delta? The reason I don't want to sell Delta is because, one, if I were to sell Delta, I feel like it would be an emotional decision on my part. I don't want to sell Delta just because Warren Buffett sold it. Just because somebody else decided to sell a stock does not mean that I should go and sell it myself. maybe Warren Buffett is wrong. I'm not saying that he is, but there is that chance that airline companies are going to be fine in the long term and that they are going to recover, dividends are going to come back, and things are going to go back to normal. To me personally, I actually see that as a relatively good chance. I don't think that airline industries are just going to stop operations for like the next 5 years. I can see this being a problem for maybe the next year, maybe the next year and a half, but eventually people will start flying again. I don't see this being a permanent issue. Yes, the near future for companies like Delta Airlines is going to be rocky. It's going to be tough. But in my personal opinion, in the long term, which is what I'm a long-term investor, I think Delta Airlines are going to get out of this fine. If eventually I stumble onto something that to me signifies that the company is 100% going to go bankrupt, then yes, I will sell my shares of the company at a loss. It's not something I want to do, but obviously, if it's necessary, I will do it. Delta Airlines are, of course, suspending their dividend, which means that I'm not going to be making any income from them. But just because they suspended their dividend does not mean that I'm going to sell them. I don't feel like just because a company cuts their dividend, that is a justifiable reason to sell out of the company. Yes, it is going to affect my return in the near future, but in the distant future, long-term speaking, I think Delta Airlines will be fine, and of course, I will probably make some money off of them. I don't know if that's right. I could be wrong again. Maybe I end up holding onto this company for too long and I lose all of my investment because the company goes bankrupt. That's a possibility that I am already accepting. And if that ends up happening, then of course, that's going to suck, but oh well, you know, I'm not going to cry over it. What I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to hold on to my shares of Delta Airlines. I'm going to see where they go. I'm going to stick along with them. Hopefully they do end up recovering in the distant future. If not, that's just how things are. All I know is that during this time, I am going to be an intelligent investor and not an emotional investor. But so far from what I'm hearing and the research that I've done, I don't think Delta is a company to completely give up on just yet. Should you listen to what I'm saying and apply that into your own investment strategy? No. Consult with a professional if you want actual financial advice, because this video is not financial or investing advice. This is just what I'm going to be doing. But I'm not going to be selling my shares just because of an emotional decision. I'm not going to be selling just because Warren Buffett decided to sell. I'm going to hold on to the company and just see what happens. But as I have stated in the title of this video, yes, I was wrong in my initial judgment of why Warren Buffett was selling off Delta Airlines initially. It turns out that he actually just wanted to get away from the company entirely. Does that mean that I'm going to follow in those footsteps? No. Will it come to bite me in the ass later down the road? Maybe, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But until then, I'm gonna wrap this video up here. So yeah guys, that's pretty much the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you smack the like button. If you want to stay up to date with my content, please be sure to subscribe. I'll have my last video in the corner. If you haven't checked that out already, definitely make sure to check it out. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching. Peace out.